hopefully you won't notice. So today we are joining together in recognition of our 47th anniversary. And IPM was founded on May 10th, 1974. I'm sure most of you know, by Jim Mayer and Paul Strege, their respective families and colleagues, as an alternative model of mission for what was then the Missouri Synod of the Lutheran Church. And over the last 47 years, IPM has morphed from a, if you will, pan-Missouri Synod to pan-Lutheran to evangelical Lutheran to ecumenical to very intentionally multi-faith organization at this point. And while acknowledging the multi-faith nature of our work, I've spent some time reading and rereading a book that was put out by the New Testament scholar N.T. Wright entitled God in the Pandemic. And I think even those of us who are not members of the Christian faith community have probably heard the phrase, the doubting Thomas. And in speaking about Thomas and his experience after the Easter holiday that many of us have celebrated and Passover, he refers to the state of those early followers of Jesus as a transformational political leader in his time. And he talks about how that there were three characteristics of those first few days: of tears, of mourning for all that they felt was lost, of locked doors, people hiding behind doors, wondering if the authorities were coming for them next or afraid of what was beyond their door, and of doubt, wondering about what they had believed and if it had been true and if there was any room for faith and for hope at the time in which we live. Over the past year, our world and certainly our society, for those here in the United States, has been rocked by tears, by the locking of our own doors, and by our doubt about faith in our political system, doubt and fear about the unwillingness of this country to confront its racist history, doubt and fear about the future of creation and all creatures, and doubt and fear, probably first and foremost for most of us, about the pandemic and the intended rise in autocracy around the world, and the way that the pandemic has laid bare the gross inequalities and injustices in our healthcare, migration, and other systems that we depend upon. So it's with that reflection and those tears that are fresh in all of our eyes. I know many of us shared them again this morning in hearing of what's currently happening in India. The relocking of doors in places like India, and Nepal, and Colombia, and Brazil, where the pandemic is into its second or third new and apparently more virulent wave. And the doubt that I'm sure many of us feel about when this will ever end and we'll get back to the normal that was never truly normal, but that we had come to accept about our station in life and our roles in the world prior to last March, that I'd like to share with you an update at this point of IPM's history as we look forward to celebrating our 50th anniversary in just 3 years' time. So our mission statement is on the screen. Hopefully you can all see that. I won't repeat that for you. But IPM's mission has continued to evolve over the years, but always with this primary focus on seeing our work as an expression of mission as a two-way street where we gain and learn more than we could ever hope to give from our material and social abundance. Ilsa, Ilsa, can you hear me? We can skip
yes,
this
Joe,
poem.
sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, in the interest of time, this was a poem that I wrote at the beginning of the pandemic, and just as relevant today. And we're happy to share all this material, obviously, with all of you, and would have copies available if we were in person. We continue to work primarily in these regions around the world, those that are highlighted in bold, Latin America and the Caribbean, in what is known as the United States, but primarily with independent nations like the Wabanaki most recently, and historically with the Shoshone and the Lakota, the Wabanaki, on whose land I now sit. In South Asia, primarily from India and from Nepal, and in sub-Saharan Africa, out of our office in Nairobi, Kenya. Ilsa. Early on in the pandemic, some of you have seen this image already, but it speaks to me of exactly what this pandemic is about, that the real pandemic is inequality. And the inequality in our approaches to gender, to race, to healthcare, to so many factors that continue to divide our societies and keep us separate and alien, if you will, from one another and those that we're called to love. It's been an unprecedented year, as I've said repeatedly, but as Margot, a young donor and friend of IPM, highlighted when she sent $100, which is a hugely sacrificial gift for her just a few months ago, the work of IPM continues to uphold the dignity of all people as we try to make and allow them to make the impact, most importantly, they seek in their own lives. We have a number of partners, and again, in the interest of time, I won't spend a lot of time with all of them. I'll let you read as you'd like as we work our way through this. The first slide in alphabetical order is from Acapamo, or otherwise known as the Creative Muses, in Armenia, El Salvador. That's actually a town, not a country, where their grinder and bakery program continues to generate income and help feed that community, along with their potable water program, in the midst of a time where they are even more socially isolated, literally on the other side of the railroad tracks, from the rest and more wealthier, from their more wealthier neighbors. At Acamujersa in Zaragoza, which is really very dear to me personally. This was the first new project, if you will, in my tenure at IPM. It's a replication of Mujer en Comunidad, Women in Community, in San Francisco Libre. You can see everyone gathered there for a pre-COVID celebration. This is in their new store, and it's a remarkable sewing cooperative that's really taking off through contracts with the national and regional government around the production of school uniforms and the reintroduction, which you can see some of in the background, of native traditional, what would have been traditional Salvadoran clothing that was wiped out quite literally during the Matanza in 1932, when everyone who hoped to survive was forced to adopt Western clothing. Taprosi has probably done, I don't want to say the most, but certainly one of the most remarkable jobs of all of our partners around the world in an increasingly difficult climate in Nicaragua, and with the rising autocracy of Daniel Ortega and his cronies. That cooperative, which represents women groups in a really wide region across the municipality of Nindari, has been providing food and other material support through donations from IPM, but also through their own micro loan program, which they kicked off with IPM support and the support of the Ostera Foundation in particular, and now is the source of a rotating collective fund that was most recently seeded with another $7,500 commitment from IPM earlier this year. I think you can see the hens in the background. The Dandora Women's Forum is a partner. Some of you know, and I think on the 47th anniversary, it's particularly important to acknowledge the history and those who have given their lives literally for this work. Was founded by Mellitus Wary, a friend of mine from the Gregorian University in Rome, who was gunned down, killed in his driveway after being elected to the Kenyan parliament in 2008 to allow the government to maintain its majority in parliament. The forum was created by Wary as a way to bring women from the different ethnic communities that have come to Nairobi as part of their internal migration to the city. I would ask if you could mute yourself. We're getting a lot of background noise if you're not talking. The forum, you can see some of the work they do, and they continue to work in a multi-faith way. Their leadership comes primarily from Muslim, Christian, and animist leaders in responding to the needs of what is the second largest, and this is their term, not mine, slum community in Africa, over 350,000 people living on the edge of the largest garbage dump in Nairobi. And they have continued to feed people. We just received a request the other day from our colleague Jared Odhiambo for the provision of more supplies so that the women can continue to sew and make masks for the children and their families, as the pandemic is now into a very virulent second wave in Kenya, with variants or incidences of the new Indian variant turning up all over Kenya. And will certainly, in a week or two, is going to be a really difficult situation. El Centro de la Formación para la Paz in Ibagué, Colombia, is composed of beautiful young kids like this one pictured here, who are working children, in the sense that because of the work that they're often single mothers are forced to do in the marketplace to make ends meet. The kids are out in the market early in the morning before school, after school, doing everything they can to help their family make it through. The pandemic, again, is particularly difficult in Ibagué right now, as is the political crackdown by the democratically elected dictatorship, really, in that country. And Ibagué is in the area of Tulamina that's surrounded by where the FARC was very prevalent during the fighting there. And many of the families that are involved in this program are also internal migrants who have gone to that city for the safety that urban environment provides, rather than being in the countryside that has been largely defoliated, and the earth has been poisoned by our own bombing in support of the Colombian government. This is one of the packages, sort of the friendly delivery, they call it, that was provided for school children trapped at home and unable to go to school during the past year. El Cercado is a community on the border between the Dominican Republic and Haiti. And I should say that Joanna Peterson, who's not pictured here, was one of the two remaining Gringa project partners in the IPM family. And that's been a transition that's been hugely important to me and the board, and I know all of you, to move from a posture of supporting missionaries primarily from the United States who were doing progressive work, but were still North Americans, to partnering directly with indigenous local people as they identify their own assets to meet the needs in their communities. Joanna has been in the DR for decades. I remember first meeting her in 1997 in the United States, in St. Louis, ironically, when she and I and others, project partners around the world, were brought there to celebrate Paul Strege, one of our founding directors' retirements. We continue to bring delegations to the Dominican Republic. Some of you will know that last February, two of my colleagues, Vicky Jimenez and Aneta Ramos, were trapped in the DR when the pandemic hit, and the Stonehill College delegation decided not to come, and they ended up being there for quite a long time and staying with Joanna's daughters, Miriam and Glory. But IPM has been really just incredibly proud, if I can use that word without being condescending, of the way that this project has developed, and the way the literally hundreds of community-based CBEs, or base Christian communities. Those of you who know the history of liberation theology in Latin America will know the hundreds of CBE members around El Cercado, and even serving across the Haitian border, have continued to do their work. There's a quote here from Zulema that I really love that says, a woman is a valuable being, and God has not created us just to stay at home. but to leave home and integrate with other women. I receive values, experiences from my group, and they receive them from me. We support each other. We have to go out and help other women. And that's in the program that's called Mano a Mano, or Hand in Hand, through the savings and loan groups that have been created in El Cercado. HUM is Hindu and Muslims United. Some of you who follow me on Facebook probably saw some of these photos posted this past week as we had a mini campaign to respond to their needs. The woman at the upper right is making a kite, which is, there's a huge festival each January where literally hundreds of thousands, probably millions, probably tens of millions of Indians fly kites as an annual celebration. And the women, through the kite making program, which was initially seeded by IPM, now make dresses, but also make masks, really colorful, wonderful masks that are of great support in generating income for themselves and protecting themselves. Even now as the this new variant spreads. Nora Subasa, who was the founding project partner of this group, is now recognized as an IPM fellow. And so she's receiving a regular stipend from IPM as part of our vision for moving forward, where she's guaranteed a certain monthly income and she's allowed to do whatever she believes is best for her community. We don't ask her to come back and ask us for something new each year, as funders do of me all the time, so that they continue supporting us, but say, we trust you. We're committed to you and the women you work with, and do what you think is best, because only you really know what that is and what's needed in your community. And I want to give kudos to Mahesh in particular, who I believe is on this call, for all the work that he does and his wife Mina has done in mentoring HUM over the years. IDIS is our newest project partner in El Salvador. It is an educational organization that works, as you can see, in creating a grassroots multi-community response in an area of El Salvador that is made up primarily of ex-combatants from the Civil War that the U.S. was involved in supporting, where over 75,000 Salvadoran citizens, innocent civilians, were killed. And IDIS works in over 16 communities. They have a tilapia program, they have a chicken program, school programs for children. And they, because of the broad scope of their presence and their work and their shared history together going back to the war, they've really been able to coordinate a very effective response to the pandemic. And I remain deeply grateful to Fatima Pacas and Adela Zayas, who initially identified through our project partner, Carlos Diaz of Lydia Cochola, this community as a new partner for IPM. And it's really been thrilling to watch the way that they've been able to respond and involve the kinds of young people you can see in the photo in their work as they prepare for the next generation of leadership of their cooperative. Again, we're flying through these folks, so I'm sorry. You can find out more information about most of these partners on our website, through our regular Facebook feed, or on our weekly forums each Friday, when many of the project partners are sharing more directly about their work. The Kandula Community Project has been the largest sort of financial recipient of IPM support in the past few years through the generosity of the Kaminer Foundation of David and Michelle Kaminer of Cleveland, Ohio. They've been working with us to literally build a brand new school from scratch. What you might think is, wow, that doesn't look very impressive. On the right of our screen, those kids were actually gathering under a tree as recently as 5 years ago, out in the open to study. And now there's a full school, Mary Goretti Primary School, that has over 400 children, as well as 40 younger kids that are in a 2-room classroom building that abuts the local Catholic parish, simply because they had the space. And a pastor who was willing to let us build there. There is also a basket weaving program. This is a community in Kenya where HIV and AIDS has had a truly horrific impact, and continues to impact generation after generation because of the rural nature and some of the traditional practices related to polygamy and FGM and other things, if you know what that is. And really a place where our partner, and particularly Teresa Matuku and Susan, are doing a wonderful job impacting now over 700 families. We're in the process of helping them build a new library there. And the project founderess, Teresa Matuku, as she moves back to Kenya, will be consulting with us as we reestablish our presence there post-COVID. Mujer en Comunidad is the organization I referred to earlier in relation to Aca Mujerza in El Salvador, which is a partner of theirs, is really modeled on this initiative. We began working with them in 2000, and in 2002, we took through partnership with Mary's Pence, which has a history in St. Louis as well. Many of you might recall that group. It's a group of Catholic women that work outside Catholic diocesan structures to support women's activities that don't have the support, if you will, of the institutional church. Mary's Pence and IPM work together to bring women from Saprosi, or what has become Saprosi, and from El Salvador together for a training by the founder of Mujer en Comunidad. And she taught them during that time sort of all the basics of how to develop a cooperative, how to engage the local police, which is still a large part of their work, and prevention of violence, both from the police perpetrated against local citizens and from the men in their lives perpetrated against the women and children of the community. But they continue to promote the well-being of women, youth, and children. And in the past year, IPM was really excited to partner with them in support of a new youth group that is working specifically with young people around gender identity and gender expression, and the way that machismo continues to oppress. And I'm trying to think of the right word. I mean, it is a very, very difficult place to not confined to gender norms. And this young group is working with the LGBTQ plus community there in helping them figure out how they can help themselves to move beyond the reality that has been so difficult for them all these years. And I'd ask you to keep Maria Felix, the project coordinator, in your thoughts and prayers and meditation practices. This morning, her nephew has been very ill, and we were speaking with her yesterday about emergency surgery that he needs to have, and trying to get source funding for her to be able to do that. Nutravita is in El Salvador. This was founded by a Marino lay missioner. Many of you will know a former IPM board member, Anna Gregg, who has spent the last almost 4 decades between El Salvador and Peru, the last 20 plus years in El Salvador. It's a community-based organization, as is most of our partners, and they support directly over 400 families through their soy program and food distribution. And they work right on the periphery of the 2 major gangs that continue to really disrupt and divide Salvadoran society, the 13th and the 18th, as they know. And because of the credibility of Anna and the women involved with the cooperative, you can see Carmen right there with the blue head wrap on, who actually has a couple of kids who are now thankfully legally in the United States after many years of living in the shadows in this country. The cooperative does remarkable work in supporting the nutritional needs and introducing a more diverse diet to the people of Mexicanos, which is probably on every socioeconomic indicator one of the most marginalized and impoverished, materially poor communities in the capital city. Patronato Lydia Cochola was started in El Zaite, which is a community that grew up over the garbage dump in the community of Zaragoza, which for those of you who might be joining from Cleveland are familiar, that's where Dorothy Kazel and Jean Donovan were working at the time of their murder in 1980. And when the Ursuline Sisters, the Cleveland Catholic Diocese, and others sort of walked away in the early 2000s, IPM tried to step into the void by supporting Aca Mujerza, a number of other community initiatives, what is now a public health clinic, and particularly working alongside Lydia Corcciola. The patronage in English is named for an Italian woman who was very active in El Salvador during the Civil War. We support the scholarship program for students at the secondary and university levels through the generosity of the Carfagna family, Highland Software, a Cleveland-based software company, and others. But for the past year, we've been providing directly the full salaries for the 4 primary teachers at Lydia Corcciola. And part of this, again, is part of IPM's indigenization. I know that's a word I'm going to have to find a better one for as our terminology changes. 5 or 10 years ago, it sounded cutting edge, and it's kind of now like partnership. Probably could find a better one. But in any case, this allows the teachers to really do their work without having to worry about any regularity in their salary, which was an issue going back to the founding of the school. And the teachers are not only there during the morning with the primary school kids, but then there through the evening for tutoring for high school and university students that come back to the community. And those of you who have been there will know this is one of my family's favorite projects, if you will. My parents have been deeply involved with it for many years. And it's, in many ways, is probably the most charitable, if you excuse that expression, partner we have. This is a school for little kids and high school kids who are coming from single parent families. There is no way they could generate income to do what they do on their own. And in many cases, it's purely a matter of survival for them on a day-to-day basis. You can see one of the women who's involved with their women's group passing out a bag that was provided during the pandemic for immediate supplies for the families, in this case for her own family. In many cases, that are women that are in as desperate a situation as anyone else who are leading the activity here. And the wall you see of the cinder block, which probably doesn't look very impressive, are the brand new bathrooms that IPM has been helping Lydia Corcciola. And if Mark Schulte was on board, he would love to see this for that community. Those of you who have been there know the status of the latrines before this new building that is providing for much better hygiene for the children and the teachers at Lydia Corcciola. I guess yours truly is in that picture. I forgot I am with Hemit Chauhan, who's was our first regional fellow, who's now become a mentor for 3 or 4 other fellows in India and Nepal. And this is our partner, the Pochabai Foundation, that works in the Gujarat state that borders Pakistan and India and has a resident population of the Jat people who were actually trapped in India after partition, originally from Afghanistan, or what is now Afghanistan. And Hemit just leads a multifaceted program that impacts the lives of literally over 100,000 people each year through their programming that you can see here. This is some of the response directly related to COVID around awareness raising, mask wearing, psychosocial support. Everyone in Hemit's family was COVID positive. Thankfully, they all have survived. And though they have some of the remnant COVID issues, they're doing well. And our colleague, our newest colleague, Bindia Makwana, who's a junior fellow out of the South Asian office, actually is the coordinator of the women's group that you can see gathering it right there. And we're talking literally tens of thousands of children involved with thousands of women who are part of that cooperative that Bindia coordinates under the umbrella of Pochabai. Not sure why Abraham Lincoln's in that picture, but I can tell you, if you've read the book Caste, that the way that Isabel Wilkerson draws a parallel between Martin Luther King and Ambedkar, the Dalit leader in India, who's really in many ways by most Indians perceived even more favorably than Mahatma Gandhi. Ambedkar was very active in this part of the country, and Lincoln, for many Indians, is seen as the liberator of the United States Dalits, as Isabel Wilkerson refers to the slave experience in this country and the ongoing experience both in the US of racial inequity and injustice and the intentional targeting and murdering of Black boys and girls, and also what continues to happen amongst the Dalit in India. And frankly, part of why the current pandemic is so out of control there is directly related to how the Hindu Nationalist Party looked the other way when the virus began to spread among the Dalit communities nationwide. Watoto Walawanga will be one of our honorees today. It is literally the children of Charles Lwanga, started by a group of Ugandan religious, and is now led by Jacinta, who you will be hearing from a bit later. It's a really unique school. There's no other way to characterize it. In Nairobi, in Kibera, which is kind of a famous / infamous community of over 1 million people in Nairobi, made up predominantly of people that are not from the dominant Kikuyu ethnic community, many from the Luo community, in particular from Western Kenya, who have migrated to Nairobi for work and are sort of confined to this area of settlements, unauthorized settlements, if you will, around the old railroad track connecting Mombasa to Nairobi and then on to Kisumu. The school serves hundreds of children. And in the past year, we've been able to continue to provide support for the special feeding program and other school resources that have been needed during the lockdown. The school has been in and out of session depending on government regulations. And I believe Jacinta can tell us, I believe they're probably going to be back out of session soon as the pandemic again expands this new variant in Nairobi, or makes its way to Nairobi from the coast. These are some examples of the packets that the kids, who are often the leaders of their own families, there's not an image of the housing here, but like I said, it's really between the railroad tracks and a river, and everything is tin shack at best, apart from this school facility that's been built through the support of a number of donors, including the Eaton Corporation, which is based in Cleveland, Ohio, and has been a partner of ours in our response to Watoto Walawanga, our work there for the past 10 years. This is but a photo of their mask and soap distribution during the pandemic. You can see that they work with over 2,500 households there. And the picture on the right gives you a better sense of the housing in Kibera. They have a sewing, part of the training program there. It's a vocational training program, is around sewing, and there's also one around nutrition. So that's been of great help to people as they've been responding. They also offer these short courses related to appropriate response to the pandemic. So one of the highlights of the past year has been the way that our international staff around the world has stepped up. When I started with IPM, I think you all know, I was what passed for diverse, as being the only non-Lutheran under 40. Now the staff is composed primarily of people outside the United States, and our leadership team of 8, which will soon be 9, is currently 5 outside the US or international employees and 3 in the US. And of the 20 plus people that work with IPM, over 75, almost 80% are outside the United States at this point. We've been able to achieve this through the support of a number of donors and friends. It looks like one of them may have just joined us from California, who have supported our work with what we call our Indigenous Leadership Development Program, or the ILDP, and the related Fellows Program. Adela Zayas, who's pictured at left, is the first ever Director of International Programs and Partnerships at IPM. She's a Salvadoran national with a master's degree, or with a degree in psychology, looking forward to pursuing her master's. And at right are Aneta Ramos and Vicky Jimenez. Aneta is our director, will soon be titled director, is now our coordinator of research and resource mobilization, grant seeking. And Vicky Jimenez, who's the coordinator of our Immersion Experience program and is our new director of transformational learning. All 3 of them are based in El Salvador. Because of the pandemic and changes in our own structure, They're all full-time employees working from there, but we look forward to introducing you all to them personally if you haven't met them when they're able to travel to the U.S. again. And they will be joined by Fatima Pakis, as I mentioned earlier, who's just completed her Fulbright at the University of Albany and has decided to move back to El Salvador and will be serving as our new Director of Strategic Research and Community Partnerships. Pictured in front of you now is a group of Indian men. You can see Mahesh in the gray with the white goatee, and Hemit sort of in the tan with his back to us. And they're facilitating a training on the parallels in the work of Paulo Freire, the Brazilian educator famous for the book Pedagogy of the Oppressed. It was an inspiration in many ways for the liberation theology movement throughout Latin America, and his teaching style and influence is still pervasive, particularly in Brazil and in El Salvador, but it also is internationally, and his work was picked up, picked up on the work of Dr. B.R. Amdekar, who I referenced earlier, is really highlighted repeatedly in Isabel Wilkerson's new book, Caste, and was the Dalit leader at the time of Indian independence and continues to be really a figure of renown, much like that photo of Abraham Lincoln was in the earlier picture, for the Dalits and other lower caste members of Indian society. These trainings have been a really important part of our work as IPM has focused more and more on technical assistance and training, building on the assets of our partners and our regional staff. The newest member of that team is Bindia Makwana, who is a young mother and the newest fellow working with Hemit and Mahesh from her village in Baal. And this is a presentation that she made to the Dalit community there, and also during a recent virtual forum for IPM. And again, like others, I would ask you to keep Bindia in your thoughts at this time. Everyone in her household is COVID positive, and her father has been hospitalized just up until recently. There's some other members of our regional staff. As you know, we can't picture them all here, but at right is Jared Odiambo, our long-term logistics coordinator in Nairobi, Kenya. Alyssa Bovell in the light blue at left, longtime IPM employee who completed her master's at Emory University and just facilitated our COVID monitoring, assessment, evaluation, and learning process that we're using to help us determine our way forward with our partners around the world in the midst of this ongoing pandemic. And Priscilla Nangarai, who's the foundress of the Bride Rescue Program and now runs 2 programs dedicated to working with Maasai girls to rescue them, if you will, from harmful cultural practices and early forced marriage and support them in their educational and vocational aspirations. She's the director of 2 acronym programs, if you will now. One is known as HELGA and one is known as GRACE. And the group at left is the last in-person immersion that I was a part of, which was from students from Yale Divinity School and Andover Newton Seminary. And this is gathered at the Salvaberg Retreat Center in Nairobi with the women leaders pictured sort of in the front and center, one with the hijab, who is the coordinator of Dandora, along with the other 2 women pictured there with her. And again, to remind her that in the case of the women that are pictured there, Zaria is obviously Muslim, Lydia in the middle is Kisi, and Jennifer at the right is from the Luo community. So this is a pan-Kenyan ethnic community cooperative based in Dandora, as I highlighted earlier. So one of the things that we want to encourage you all to consider, particularly those of you who are feeling still a little trapped at home and wanting to get out and see the world, but not feeling comfortable hopping on a plane anytime soon, is to join us at on one of our new virtual immersion experience programs, which builds on IPM's long-term signature program, the in-person immersions. We have had over 250 immersions since the program began in 2003, with approaching 2,500 participants. It's an opportunity to learn, and we have a number of virtual immersions planned for the balance of the year in South Asia, in El Salvador, hopefully in Kenya, and ideally an in-person immersion or two if the situation continues to improve in Italy and here in Maine among the Wabanaki. You can see a list of some of the VIPs that have been carried out to date and some of what that looks like, masked and at a distance on Zoom. The upcoming VIPs that I mentioned, we have one dedicated to the topic of caste, looking at racial, caste-based, tribal, ethnic-based inequity with John Carroll University in Cleveland, Ohio in a couple of weeks. And then in India in September, November, December, the International Executive Board and guests will travel to El Salvador. And then we're hoping to be able to travel in person to Italy at the beginning of next year. We also have in process, hopefully in-person immersions, but of course, all this is still tentative at this point, to Colombia, Nicaragua, and thematic immersions based on gender equity and migration that will be taking place in 2022. I did mention meal, and just again to say briefly, this was the monitoring, evaluation, assessment, and learning process we went through last year, looking at the very real live reality of all of our partners, particularly in Latin America, India, Nepal, and Kenya, and how COVID was impacting them. And the information was collected in obviously an ethical and appropriate way. And Fatima Pakas, in her new role, will be building upon this information to be making strategic recommendations for the 2022 International General Assembly, when we will all gather together to look forward to IPM's 50th anniversary and the upcoming half century, we hope. The process included these factors, or identified these factors as being primary themes right now related to how our partners are responding to COVID around loss of income, changes in relationship dynamics, including a real spread. I'm trying to think of a better word. Greater incidences of domestic violence, which we know has been the case in the US and internationally when people have been confined to their own homes, challenges affecting children and youth around education, the gendered implications of COVID-19, lots of young women being married off earlier in places like India and Kenya to obtain dowries when families are desperate to provide health care, and the real need for solidarity, collective care, and the accompaniment that's always been at the heart of IPM's mission as we move forward this year. We work with our project partners in a multifaceted manner. As I was saying to someone the other day, I only wish IPM had a simple widget that we just took or provided around the world. Since our founding, our focus has really been on partnership, and not in the way that banks and everyone else talks about partners now, but really in a way that allows the community-based organizations with whom we work to identify for themselves, with IPM support if they need it, what they need and what assets they have in their community that can help address those needs. And so through our regional staff and fellows, through bilateral, multilateral sharing, through funding, technical assistance, time together, accompaniment, microloans, whatever it might be, we continue to walk alongside them in their own journeys to be the subjects of their own history, as Paulo Freire and so many others have said. This has been a year, as I've mentioned, of great struggle, but also one of a real pivot. And we're deeply, I can't tell you, particularly those of you who have been with us in St. Louis since our founding, how grateful we are for the way many of you have stepped up or stepped back up as IPM donors this past year. We saw a 25% increase in lapsed donors, people who hadn't given in the past 2 years, who came back and gave to IPM again this year. We were the grateful recipient of CARES Act funding and of a very generous bequest from Grace Weber that has allowed us to move forward. And one of the few nonprofits I know that wasn't forced to lay off staff in response to the pandemic, but rather through shared sacrifice and commitment was able to maintain our staff and actually add people in need of regular income to our international staff in each of our regional offices. These were the words of the late Grace Weber when she was referring to IPM and IPM's work around the world, and pictured at left is a group of children from Pachabai in a recent march for International Children's Day there in Golana in support of their own rights, and particularly for the educational rights of girl children. And it says, thank you to IPM staff and project partners for continuing to inspire hope to people both in the US and around the world. Lives of women, children, and youth are constantly changed through IPM project partners that make a difference for the marginalized and those whose circumstance is a daily struggle. And I want to thank, I'm not sure if he's on the call now, but particularly Grace's brother, Les, who's become such a good friend in the organization as we've tried to live up to Grace's bequest and her commitments to this organization this past year. Isabel Wilkerson, I've referred to that book many times. If you haven't read Cast, read it. And when you read it, then pick up The Warmth of Other Suns. Really two incredible books that outline in a very personal, narrative, historical way the challenges that continue to not only face our nation as we seek to confront the racial inequity and the racism that has been a part of our history for over 400 years, but also as we continue to work with communities like the Dalit individuals in Golana, the community from which Hemit and Bindia hail, with other marginalized ethnic communities in Kenya, in Brazil, in Colombia, and other parts of the world that are represented on this call today, and also to support those in the ongoing struggles for advocacy and political legitimacy and democracy and freedom in places like Nicaragua, where our newly elected IPM co-chair, Xenia Chavez, is based through her work with Saprosi. These are pictures, the upper left, from our last General Assembly. And we're looking forward to gathering together again in Cleveland in 2022, and then especially in 2024 for our 50th anniversary celebration, which will take place in multiple places around the world. And Isabel Wilkerson reminds us in CAST that we are responsible for our own ignorance. I don't think we think of that. We all think about how we're responsible for how we get ahead, but we don't think about how we're responsible for what we don't know. And with time and open-hearted enlightenment, we can also be responsible for our own wisdom. We are responsible for ourselves, for sure, our own deeds and misdeeds, in our own time and our own space. And we will be judged accordingly by the generations that follow. She says that a world without caste would set everyone free. Our founders probably would have said that a world without borders or boundaries of faith and culture and economic circumstance is what will set everyone free. And for 47 years, through your support, your commitment, and your passion for this organization, we've tried to live up to that aspiration. So we're deeply grateful to all of you online, and especially those who are not as familiar with Zoom and Facebook, but who we keep in our hearts and our prayers, for all the support that you have provided for this organization and our partners these past 4+ decades. And we look forward to living up to your expectations and living into that history of a world free of the things that divide us based on race and caste and culture and economic circumstance as we head into our second half century. So thank you for all that you do. Thank you, Ilsa, for your help in making this presentation this morning. And I'll turn it over to you at this time. I think you're muted, Ilsa.
You're muted, Ilsa.
Great. Thank you, Joe. I know we're running a little bit long, but I couldn't help but reflect on how a relatively small organization like IPM is able to accomplish so much. And it's because, and honestly, I don't want to get emotional about it, but how can you not? When you know that people's lives are transformed because we have a connection in partnership, a connection in hearts that spans the globe. And so we are so deeply grateful, as Joe said throughout his presentation, for all of you and for all of the other IPM supporters and friends that aren't on the call today. We could not do what we have done if it wasn't for you. So thank you for helping us. And now we come to a fun part of the program where we get to specially recognize some wonderfully supportive and committed people that have helped advance our mission throughout the years. And so I will see if I can, let's see, get my other PowerPoint going.
For those of you who may have joined us later, we're going to present 4 awards today, or we planned on it. One of them is a surprise. So the person that's getting that award, it looks like they're still on the call, which is wonderful. Mark Schulte, as we mentioned earlier, was thinking we were doing this on the actual anniversary, which is Mother's Day, instead of today. And so he's not with us. He's taking care of his father. He lost his mother recently, and his dad is not doing incredibly well. And so he is with him now. But we want to also, and we will acknowledge Mark, and we want to especially acknowledge all the mothers in the IPM family this weekend, which is Mother's Day in the United States. I know it isn't all over the world, but it does coincide with Mother's Day in places like El Salvador and some of the other countries where we work.
So Joe, you and I will have to work as a tag team on this. I will advance the slides. Here we just have some of the wonderful project partners and individuals that have been part of our history. And as we move through some of this, the first award that we would like to present is the Mayor Strege. Oops. Oh, it's flying by. It's got,
yeah, right. So the Mayor Strege.
That is the spirit of our founders that are all with us.
Right.
So, Joe, I can turn it over to you here. It explains what the Mayor Strege Award is, but I will let you, and I'll advance the slides.
Yeah, those of you joining us in St. Louis, live on Zoom or Facebook now, who will watch this later, will certainly know as well or better than I who Jim and Sammy Mayer and Paul and Vercille Strege were and what legacy they left in that community. And particularly for IPM. And each year we are honored to present an award in their memory, building upon their legacy and the continued engagement of their family members that support someone who, by their very work and presence with IPM, embodies the spirit and the commitment to foster justice, peace, and hope around the world that was the hallmark of Jim and Sammy and Paul and Vercille's lives. Many of us had the great privilege of knowing them, and both of our honorees today did. They were 4 of the most remarkable people, frankly, I've ever met. Their sacrifice and their commitment was truly extraordinary, and they continue to be a great support to me and to the entire IPM family throughout their lives, through the more recent passing of Paul just a few years ago. And Sammy just before the pandemic. So our first honoree is Caroline Mills, who is with us. She is the foundress of Sacagawea Treasurers. She was the first project partner board chair since Matthew Carter, who's actually pictured it in that last picture in the upper left. And invaluable member of the board in a time of transition, visited with me in Maine and did some shared programming with the Wabanaki community here with Mahesh, sort of playing on the term Indian and comparing the lives of Indians and Native Americans, has traveled with us around the world and continues to be a real inspiration for her Shoshone community. She shared with me the other day about benches that she's had placed because of COVID around the gravesite of Sacagawea, who many of you will know the name, but maybe not know that she is Shoshone, and the work that she continues to do with the young people in her community. She is a dear and treasured friend of IPM. And I think I'm turning it over to Caroline at this moment to say a few words if she'd like. Thank you, Caroline, for agreeing to be an Mayor Strege Award winner at this time.
Okay, thank you. I'm very honored to receive this award. Very touching. I can get like Ilza and get emotional. You know, I have so many memories, and it seems like I'm still with IPM, because after watching all the slides, it's like, I was there, I remember. And it seems like nothing has changed, but you know, I'm very touched and honored to receive this award. And you know, I'm very thankful, and just want to say I appreciate all that you do. And wow, bringing back memories with all the different slides that are being shown. I know it was a lot of work when we had visitors here, and I keep in touch with some of the people, and I know Mickey asked about Ivora Ray, and she's doing good. She's a little slower, but she's still around. I took her to Mass on Easter, and you know, I'm currently helping some of the elders when, you know, take them to church, and so it's like now I'm helping the elders and getting involved with some of our traditional foods here in Gathering. And so that's what I've been doing lately. And so thank you for this award. And I'm great to be part of this IPM family. Thank you. Oos.
Thank you, Caroline. Hopefully many of us, you saw the photos, had the great privilege of being able to be with Caroline at Fort Washakie over the years. And we look forward to the day that we can be present with one another again.
I just wanted to add, I apologize. The slide is kind of advancing on its own. So I don't know what's going on. I think the spirits are all with us, but Caroline, you are a treasure, and we are blessed to have you be part of the IPM family. So Joe, I think it's time now for the surprise presentation, since it is another Mayor Strege Award. Right.
So we wanted to do a little surprise here, because the person that we're going to give this award to, and now I'm a crier like Caroline and Ilsa, so is someone of great personal humility and deep commitment to this organization. His connection to IPM literally begins with his family. Jim Mayer was not only his uncle, but I believe his godfather. And over the years, Jim Camphafner has had my back and has given sacrificially from his home in Marin, California, in support of IPM in ways that are really beyond measure. He's reached out to donors and friends throughout the community, including, I think, it looked like Mark Shargell, who he's gotten to know over the years, and in that part of the world, has welcomed many of us into his own home in California, has traveled to St. Louis religiously, if you will, year by year, to be present not only for his family, but for his extended Mayer family, and to be sort of the next generation leader, if you will, of that family and their commitment to this organization. I've had the privilege of traveling with Jim at great personal sacrifice, I'll say, on his part, with great difficulty physically for him to get to some of the places that we go. I've never heard him complain. I've always heard him talk deeply about how happy his uncle and aunt would be at where IPM has come. And we thought that as he steps out of his second term, an unplanned term as a board chair, when our former chair had to step down for personal reasons that many of you are aware of, that Jim was willing, as he always has been, to step in and to provide leadership, and now to hand over the new leadership of IPM for the first time to co-chairs, but Clint McCann from Eden Theological Seminary in St. Louis, and Xenia Chavez from our project partner, Saprosi, in Nicaragua. So it is with deep and humble gratitude for everything that he represents, his faith, his commitment, and the way he models partnership and all he does for the IPM family, that we present this Mayor Strege Award to Jim Camp-Hefner. And we didn't ask Jim to speak, so he'll have to decide whether he can, since this is hopefully a total surprise.
Well, it absolutely is a complete surprise. I had no idea. I was just about wanting to speak and say that I wanted to thank Caroline for being such a good model for me to follow as chair. I don't think I could have done it without her model, her leadership style, soft-spoken but strong. Was a good model for me to try and follow as best I could. I just thank all of you here. IPM's in a great place. I mean, I'm involved as much in IPM as I am because I'm just inspired by all of you, starting with Joe. Joe just won me over very quickly the first time I met him, I think, and I'm sure that's true for most of you as well. But this is such a great group, and IPM's in a great place because of all of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim.
Oh my gosh, I'm not going to say anything more than Joe said, but I think the emotions for all of us, Jim, are there. I mean, you are such a gift and such a blessing to all of us. Okay,
thank you, Ilza.
So now we will advance to David.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on with I'm telling you, it's advancing on its own here, but maybe we just quickly summarize the David Westcott Award.
Yeah, you know, when I think of Mother's Day and all the moms I've known at IPM, certainly Gloria Westcott was one of those, and she stood by David's side through thick and thin as the son of a conservative Southern Lutheran bishop who sort of got religion, if you will, and stood up during the civil rights era for racial justice and racial equity, as many of our founding Lutheran pastor founders would and did, as you would. The late Dick Searing, George Herbeck, who's still here in Cleveland. Dick hailed from St. Louis. Obviously Jim and Paul and so many others. And David never entered religious life formally, never became ordained. He was way too humble for that. He was a mentor and a confidant of mine and many of ours all along until he passed away after a really remarkable life dedicated to service with a particular focus on racial justice and providing food security to the hungry and the homeless in our shared hometown of Cleveland, Ohio. He did everything, literally quite everything at IPM, from serving as the board treasurer to collecting supplies at Office Max to licking stamps and running to the post office when we still did that regularly, and was a real model of servant leadership. And we chose this year to honor a dear, dear friend of David's, Mark Schulte, who's not able to be with us, as we mentioned. When IPM was in a real critical moment, not because I was in Italy, but I was, so I will take no credit for this. But Carol Finling, David, and others literally had to pick IPM up from its former location and move into Justine Peterson Housing, a local CDC in St. Louis that Mark was on the board of, provided us with an office. And under the leadership of the then board chair, Matthew Carter, who you saw pictured earlier, new board members and chairs like Sharon Milligan and Jan Bullard, pictured at least on my screen now. And through the years, Mark was present as not only a rent-free landlord, but as an attorney, and to this day keeps us legal, if you will, by filing all the appropriate documentation we need for us in Missouri. His sister was a project partner leader in Nepal, and her project there led directly to Famadi, who's our first ever Nepalese board member, and Sony, who's on our call today, who's a member of the staff, a senior fellow from her home in Kathmandu. Mark is a remarkable man of faith, the father of two incredible children. And while I'm deeply sorry that he's not able to be with us this morning, I think as much as anyone in the IPM family, for the time that I have known him, he has fully embodied the spirit and the commitment of David N. Westcott, and as such is a really totally appropriate and fitting recipient of this year's award. So congratulations to you, Mark, whenever you're able to watch this, and I'll look forward to a Brazilian dinner with you in St. Louis sometime soon. His law office actually abuts a Brazilian restaurant, for those of you who don't know the joke. So we've spent many a long night there over the years. I'm not sure that Rodrigo would approve, but it's, by St. Louis standards, it's pretty good. So our final honoree, I'm trying to get through this here, is in memory of a dear friend of IPM, Kathleen Mink, who passed away from brain cancer that frankly was initially kind of diagnosed when we were together in Italy, when she kept getting lost in the midst of an immersion after having traveled to El Salvador as well. We went to a pharmacy in Assisi. Some of you probably don't even know this story, or most of you don't. And the pharmacist there, which is kind of like the local doctor in Italy, just based on her symptoms and some of the other things she shared with him, suggested she get a CAT scan as soon as she got home. And she did. And she passed within a year of that diagnosis. She's pictured at left on your screen. She was a long-term single woman, executive at AT&T, and left a significant bequest to IPM at the time of her passing, which we used and honor annually through the presentation of the Kathleen T. Mink Project Partner Award. She's pictured here on that trip to Italy. She had always hoped to go along to Kenya with Aline and I, and was actually scheduled to do so in the January of the year that she passed. And so that trip was postponed, and she was never able to get to Kenya, though we did bring her back some things she requested, and were able to share photos and stories from that experience before she passed. And it is only fitting that again this year, we've honored partners from other countries, that on our 47th anniversary, we honor Watoto Walawanga with the Kathleen T. Mink Project Partner Award. And I believe Jacinta is on the call on Zoom and will be able to share a few words with us at this time. Jacinta, Habari, are you there?
Yes, Joe, I'm there. How are you?
I'm good, Asante.
You can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Okay. On behalf of Watoto Warwanga, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for sharing this moment of us being awarded this award. It is truly humbling for us at Watoto Warwanga. In particular, Joe, we take this moment to thank you and IPM fraternity, because you have always understood and believed in Watoto Warwanga capacity to address the many problems faced by the Kibera community, and especially the children, the youth, and the young mothers. The time and the effort that you have given ensure that the children and the youth in Kibera who are in need are able to access basic education, vocational training, To us, this is priceless gift. This award may have the Watoto Warwanga project on it, but in truth, it belongs to all of us who have worked to make sure Watoto Warwanga Center is a reality. I will simply say thank you to you, the community that we serve, and to IPM for believing in us. Thank you for the award, and thank you on behalf of all those who will cross over on this bridge to a brighter future. Once again, we are beyond words to receive this award. God bless you and keep safe. Thank you.
Asante Sana, thank you very much, Jacinta. In each of these award cases, there is an actual physical award. And in the case of the Kathleen Mink Award, there is also a project partner donation that we will be making in response to the remarkable work that you continue to do for the children of Watoto Walawanga. Thank you again for the leadership you continue to provide to that community. And I have to say, really remarkable leadership for a woman like you to now be the head of a school founded by a group of Catholic religious men from Uganda. It's exactly the kind of testament to equity and the shared gender leadership of the community-based organizations that IPM seeks to partner with in our work around the world. So congratulations, and thank you again for being with us. I know it's very late in Nairobi at this time. Hilsa, I believe you.
Thank you, Joe.
We would all be clapping together and celebrating together with hugs and high fives and all the rest if we were in person. But I believe Ilsa has put a little something together that we can share with all of you at this time. And or we'll be coming through the pictures that we have shared throughout the program. I don't know, Ilsa, if you're able to coordinate that, or Zoom still has a mind of its own.
Yeah, we will. Well, I think we're going to conclude the program at this point. We will share the link to this presentation with everyone so that you can watch it again. We apologize for the technical difficulties, but we most importantly are just grateful, as Clint had said earlier, that we can all connect, virtually this way with everyone around the world. And I see Marty Finling next to Carol Finling. So hi, Marty. It's honestly a family. IPM is a true family that I know has impacted countless lives. And for me personally, I'm so grateful, forever grateful. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that Joe, as the CEO, who will be celebrating his 20-year anniversary next month, we are so grateful, Joe, for your vision, for your commitment that has allowed the continued growth with the backing and support of incredible volunteers, donors, and board and staff. So, Joe, thank you all. Thank you personally, and thank you all for making IPM possible.
Thank you, everyone. Clearly,
Joe,
we wouldn't.
I apologize. We did have some additional videotaped messages of congratulations, but we will be sharing those on Facebook later since we have run late. But we are so grateful that so many project partners provided us with little video notes of congratulations, not only to IPM, but again to you, Joe, for your leadership. So we will be sharing those soon.
Thank you, Ilsa, and while I appreciate what you said, none of what has been possible in the last 20 years and certainly the 47 years would not have been possible without the generous support and commitment of all of you, particularly in St. Louis, who have meant so much to this organization and took the courageous stand at great personal risk to found this organization 47 years ago. So as we look forward to our 50th anniversary, I was going to ask Xenia, but since she had to attend to an emergency in her Nindari community this morning, maybe Mahesh, could I ask you, I hate to put you on the spot, but could I ask you to close us with some of the words of wisdom and of faith that you're always so ably share with the IPM family? And we'll look forward to sharing this presentation with all of you and those video presentations throughout the coming week as we celebrate this special anniversary year.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you to the whole IPM family and team. I would like to close in these difficult times with a small prayer that Bindya just shared with me a while ago. She's sorry she's unable to attend this meeting, but she remembers a prayer that she learned when she was in 9th grade. She's the only Christian in her family. And in this moment, she says, "Be merciful to me, Lord, for I am in distress. My eyes grow weak with sorrow, my soul and body with grief. But I trust in you, Lord. I say you are my God. My times are in your hands." And in the end, she says a prayer that she often repeats when she feels helpless in difficult times. "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." So with this, I conclude the prayer and this evening session. Thank you.
Well, thank you to everyone who's joined us today on Zoom and who will watch this on Facebook or on YouTube later. We're deeply, deeply grateful for all that you have done to make our mission possible these 47 years. And as you continue with your important work, and as so much of our world continues to be ravaged by the pandemic and the autocracy that is prevalent in so many of the countries where we work, and as our own nation wrestles with racial injustice and our world wrestles with the remnants of caste and global climate change, may the peace that passes all understanding be with you this day in your work, and with you and all those you love in the days and in the weeks ahead. Thank you for being with us, and take good care. Stay safe and be well, everyone.
Peace, everybody. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All the best.
Good to see you.
Bye.
Good health to all of you.
And keep safe.
That's tall.